It feels like Empires of the Undergrowth has been around in early access forever. I first played it in 2018, set it down for a while, and now there's finally a version 1, released on July 7th, 2024. It's the debut game from indie developers Slug Disco. It's hard to describe, a bit of a niche game in a niche genre, playing somewhere between a traditional real-time strategy and a lair-building game like Dungeon Keeper. Now that it's released, I can finally say, this game was absolutely a blast. Fresh, engaging, tense, and constantly leapfrogging its own highs. But before I get too far into it, there's going to be a lot of spiders in this video. The game itself has an arachnophobia slider that puts increasingly large hats on the spiders, but I didn't play with it on, so there's going to be some photorealistic giant spiders coming up. Empires of the Undergrowth has us taking control of an ant colony. The species of ant depends on the mission, and there are variances in how species play. What they eat, what kind of soldiers and special abilities they have, and so on. Typically we have the same gameplay loop present in all colonies. Expand the hive, conquer the nasty surprises hidden in the earth, secure food, raise an army, and defeat your enemies. There are a few biomes at play, and our enemies can comprise rival ant colonies or large creatures like scorpions, salamanders, and beetles. The trick of scale in this game is really fun. Fighting a bullfrog feels like challenging a bloody-handed god. It scales down in a genre that's almost always about scaling up. In hive construction, we have somewhat limited choices. We can build roads, food storage, and egg tiles that hatch and sustain a single unit. So you'd build a chamber full of soldiers, they hatch, and then when that squad gets slurped up, the waiting eggs hatch their replacements for a cost in food. Tiles can also be upgraded across 3 tiers. These upgrades can only occur if a certain upgrade point threshold is met, which only gets built up by improving the surrounding tiles. It's all tied to that one resource, so every mission feels like a tremendous balancing act. Do I use that food to upgrade my soldiers, or keep a healthy stockpile so I can keep reinforcing in a pitched battle? There's a surprising amount of choice packed into this one resource. We also don't take control of units at the individual level. All ants raised on a contiguous patch of nest will appear at the bottom as a control group, which we can assign to a specific pheromone trail. You can place the 5 trails freely, but the ants will path their way to the target location on their own. There's further customization of orders at this level. You can deactivate gathering for a group of soldiers you want to stand guard, or deactivate combat when a fight goes south. And there's a lot more granularity with specific combat and gathering actions as well. One of my favorite things about this game is the level design. In the story mode, it's all extremely intentional with evolving conditions, such as the beach, where the tide gradually rises and washes away resources, then goes out and replenishes them at the start of the next day. The map is often as much your enemy as the scorpions, an ethos that seems inspired by something like Homeworld. The various ant species also have special abilities related to their real-life counterparts, like the fire ants laying themselves into bridges so the colony can raid resources across water. Overall, it's an approach to the RTS genre that I just haven't seen before. A mix of seemingly minimal control deepened by tons of options, plus the base building, and even the approach to streamlining resource management. Sometimes the combat even resembles Pikmin. It all feels great to play. There's a handful of custom game modes available, but no functioning multiplayer, at least not at this point, so the main focus is the campaign. The story mode is split between documentary-styled missions that act as standalone levels where we take control of an ant colony in the wild, and the Formicarium levels where we follow a persistent colony of genetically modified gene stealer ants being tested in some kind of B-movie laboratory. There's an obvious tonal difference between the two. The missions have an Attenborough Animal Planet style narration, and honestly, I retained a bizarre amount of ant info after playing through them. It's not quite edutainment, but I sure did learn something. On the other hand, the lab missions are a bit kitschy, cheesy, and surprisingly funny. When I was a kid, I used to jar up spiders and praying mantises to orchestrate little gladiator matches. The scientist monitoring our colony has basically the same attitude, except with a PhD. I don't really emote very much when I'm gaming, but this one did have me grinning. There are 5 difficulty levels for each mission, as well as a challenge mode that adds a complicating factor, usually a new environmental hazard or enemy type. Missions typically run from half an hour to a full hour. The higher difficulty levels give you better rewards for the Formicarium, plus each mission has a handful of very specific achievements. This leads me to one of the only things I found as a flaw within the game. It's a little thing you probably take for granted, but boy is it a huge issue here. There's no in-mission saving. Most missions are an hour long and end with a boss fight, and if you fail that boss because of some random freak occurrence, there goes an hour of your time. It got annoying quick when I started achievement hunting and lost one of the challenges a few seconds before the mission ended. This kind of stuff didn't bother me when I was a kid with unlimited time, but as a working adult, it's a hard deal. One other thing I wanted to really draw attention to before I wrap up: the sound design. A lot of the unit sounds and effects in Empire are fairly generic, taken from royalty-free sites and listed off in the credits. They tend to just blend in with the gameplay, not drawing attention to themselves in particular. But what doesn't blend in is the voice work and the music. This game is a big shiny diamond in the audio department. The vocal performances are great, from the fun kvetching of the always frantic, persecuted mad scientist.
Then clear out the specimens and bleach the equipment.
Yes, I know. I'm doing it.
And when you are finished here, I think we should have a word about your conduct around the laboratory.
I think we should have a word about your conduct around the laboratory.
What was that?
Nothing. Starting the experiment.
Good.
To the cool and level documentary narrator.
Escorted by a small entourage of loyal soldiers, this young queen has set out to establish a new colony on the edge of the savannah. These are Megaponera analis, the Matabelians. They are large, fierce, and specialize in raiding termite nests.
Great voice work adds such an incredible layer of production value to this game, and so does the music. Mostly done in an orchestral style. Each level has a calm theme and a battle theme, fading between the two seamlessly as action rises and falls. It's really fantastic at building the tension of each level, and the pieces run on the high side of quality, falling somewhere between genuinely pleasant and outright catchy. Overall, Empires of the Undergrowth is an incredible addition to the real-time strategy scene. Before I bought it, I never thought I'd be interested in an Ant game. Hell, I didn't even know there were Ant games other than Sim Ant. But it goes to show, good games are where you make them. Not every game needs to be about a planet-destroying monster or gunning down 1,000,000 terrorists. Sometimes an exciting tale of survival is right beneath our feet. On the pain scale, I'd give Empires of the Undergrowth a painless. The gameplay is incredibly addictive, the game's level design is constantly exceeding itself, it presents exactly as much challenge as you want it to, and there's always a new trick or tactic to learn. The only downside is the extremely limited save system in combination with the long levels. But even this adds a strong tension to each level. Failure is real here. It's life or death, all to a spectacular soundtrack. Well, that's it for my 24th review. I'm debating about covering the new Space Marine game, but I'll probably also end up playing another indie game. Oh well. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any suggestions or comments, feel free to drop a message. See ya!
But what's this? Could it be? The almighty hand of God!